Okay. Good evening, everyone. Are we recording? Thank you. Welcome to the Monday, November 10th meeting of the Finance, Taxation, and Assessment Committee to discuss proposed budget for this upcoming year. This evening, committee members present are Councilmember Ballerin, Councilmember Farrell, and myself, Sonia Frederick, Chair. We are also joined by our Common Council President, Corey Ellis. Other council members present, we have Councilmember Conti and Councilmember Hoey. From our city, we have our city clerk, Shaniqua Jackson. We also have our legislative director, Brian Jimenez, and our legislative aide, Carly Johnson, I believe. Do we have Robert today? No. Oh, there you are. Hello. We're also joined by our research counsel, Robert Wenner. So for this evening, we have a number of topics to discuss. I'm just looking at who's present in the room, and we're going to take this a little bit out of order. So what we are going to start with is Corporation Counsel presentation. We will then go into, but before you join us, we also have public comment. Thank you so much. Then we are going to go into the auditor's office if they are present to present at that time. I know they have a short window of availability this evening. Then we're going to go into the mayor's office presentation. We will also discuss the discussion. We have a discussion on the Albany Housing Authority's request for increased security that came from Councilmember Ballerin. We will have a continued discussion on the property tax proposed increase, and we will also discuss this evening Local Law C of 2025, Local Law amending Section 42-263 of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to the salaries of elected officers. With that, we do allow for all finance meetings time for public comment. Do we have any public comment signed up for this evening? Thank you. 1 second, we'll just get the list. Thank you. For the record, we are also joined by committee member Megan Keegan. Our first comment for this evening is, public comment for this evening is from Miss Irene, I believe it's Gallagher. If you can join us here at the front, just make sure the mic is turned on, and you'll notice by having a green light, and then also just state your name and the city in which you live for the record. Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Whenever you're ready, you'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Your name and city of location for the record.
Okay. My name is Irene Gallier. I live at 893 Lancaster Street here in Albany. As I just stated, my name is Irene Gallier, and as you can tell, I'm not Steve Harvey, Dr. Phil, or Jim Carrey. However, at one time in their lives, they experienced homelessness too, and that's what I'm here to talk about. They received family support, talent, and luck, helping them in achieving stardom. Others, like the man in the movie, The Pursuit of Happiness, or a friend of my brother John's, Nora Bush, and my brother Tim, had help out of homelessness and poverty by opportunities presented to them through business and churches to access housing, healthcare, education, and employment. The American dream. I'm here with the National Union of the Homeless, the Poor People's Campaign, and the Nonviolent Medicaid Army. For over a year now, we have organized to call attention to the plight of the marginalized, working poor, and mentally challenged. I have been on the street on and off over the past 2 years, occasionally subletting or staying with acquaintances, doing apartment searches, shelters, and the mission. After applying for a subsidy, I recently was placed in an apartment. I am 65 years old. In my 20s and 30s, I had a mortgage. In my 30s and 40s, I shared a roof with my second husband. I received health care through my employer. At 50 years old, my life took a tragic turn. Abandoned, I went to a system I paid into my whole life. Needing, disability, Medicare, Medicaid, housing. I was flooded with paperwork I could barely understand and discourteous service providers. However, I managed through my difficulties. We have gone from a very benevolent society to a very malevolent society. Housing in Albany is a disgrace of unsanitary and dangerous mismanagement. As we all know, SNAP benefits, WIC benefits, heating benefits are held up. Earlier this year, 4 youths assaulted me on State and Broadway. Recently, a friend of mine had his arm broken in a similar situation. I and others are harassed at free fridges by Albany city workers and Albany Police Department. Places like South Mall Towers, the Ida Yarborough building, and the former Lincoln Towers has been a plague on this city for years. We are treated like second-class citizens and not senior citizens. I'm here to break the stigma of homelessness. I'd like to thank Council members Jack and Kelly for attending the Westminster Church breakfast. I would like to thank the former mayoral candidates, all 4 that I met at Serve Albany. I would like to wish everybody a happy Veterans Day, and I'm an advocate here, and if you have any questions, I'll be willing to take them. I don't know how much time I have.
Thank you, Irene. That was perfectly timed. You're now at 5 minutes, so appreciate you giving your public comment this evening.
Oh, thank you very much. And thank you for getting me out of here early because the weather's terrible.
Of course, yes. Stay dry, stay safe.
All right.
Okay, our next public comment is Keith Irish. I have my phone going. Yeah, thank you. All set.
Good evening, members of the Common Council Finance Committee and other members present. As you know, my name is Keith Irish, a lifelong city resident currently in the 9th Ward. Tonight, I am here to discuss the 2026 budget. You will be speaking to representatives of the Mayor's Office, the Corporation Council, and audit offices. The proposed budget shows an outstanding request for 6 additional positions to the Mayor's inner circle staff, which is entirely unheard of and unwarranted at this stage of transition from one administration to the next, even though there will be no changes from one to the other in style and lack of transparency. There is no reason whatsoever to increase the staff of an office that does nothing now for the citizens its office serves. At the same time, there is proposal to increase the tax rate of 3%, again unheard of, especially when it includes this proposed 6-person staff increase. Several other departments mentioned at my last public comments are requesting additional staffing as well, and those are mostly unwarranted as well. The Mayor's Office should be serving the public, which elected them somehow by providing governmental transparency on all issues, not keeping residents out of the loop until after something has happened, such as by no way limited to an example of last Friday's police department hires, which was never made public, even being planned for, and for that matter, holding it even when most citizens would not or could not be able to attend. This is just shameful of a mayor's office and staff. No additional staff should be getting added at this time during this transition period. The current staff, if doing their job correctly, would be informing the residents of what the mayor is doing way ahead of time. Publicly planned also way ahead of time, and totally transparent at all times by issuing such as, but not limited to, press releases and itineraries for the coming week or even months, and not after they have happened. Additional 6 extra staff will not correct this at all. The audit office should be doing audits in-house and doing a large amount of them, but the current office holder has only done a few and farmed them out, costing taxpayer funds, whereas the previous chief auditor did a large amount of audits and did them in-house with the then staff, which is what should be getting done. These items are not government transparency at all, but hiding behind the truth that should be getting out. Speaking of which, this is what leads to a lack of government transparency by not properly funding, not properly utilizing, not properly staffing Albany's community media cable access operations, commonly referred to as Channel Albany, but covers way more than that. But by holding the reins on the available funding, which I again remind you is not property tax dollars, but from the franchise fee item that are on residents' Spectrum cable bill, and must be going to the channel's operational needs and not the general fund. At the last meeting, the budget director, when asked by you where the franchise funds are in the budget, indicated it is under the treasurer's part of the budget, but by no means is it itemized where it is. There appears to be one line that might cover that amount, but these fees should be itemized in the budget, so I strongly recommend that they do not get lumped in with other franchise fees and should be itemized, each one of them. The director also was asked why the amounts in the budget have come down, which he responded, those are
1 minute remaining. 1 minute remaining.
Oh, thank you. Give me 15 seconds. The director, when asked why the amounts in the budget have come down, which he responded, those are the traditional amounts. I almost laughed out loud at that. And those are the amounts that this administration have strangleholded the funds at. You, as the Common Council, have the control over these funds and its own, and your civil and transparency duty to increase the funds to the operational needs by at least 8 times minimum for additional staffing and availability to the public that has the right to use the facilities. Time left? Quick, doesn't matter.
20 seconds.
Okay. Since I noticed it got added to the agenda tonight that I wasn't aware of about local law C, I had previously commented on that the amounts indicated on average are about a 15% increase, and that is quite exorbitant, as I've previously stated at that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Irish. Okay, that concludes our public comment for this evening. For the record, we are also joined by committee member Sergio Adams. We are also joined by President Pro Tem Kelly Kimbrough. Due to attendance that I see both in here and immediately out the door, as well as understanding some tight schedules we have for presentation, we are going to stick to the order as noticed for the agenda. So apologies, Mr. McGee, but you will go shortly. So we will first start with the auditor's office. At this time, we are joined by our incoming Chief City Auditor-elect, Sam Fine. Hi, Sam. Thank you for joining us this evening. If you can come to the front, yep. And just for public awareness of what we're doing, obviously we just had an election. Many congratulations to you, Sam, on your victory. We look forward to seeing the work that you're going to do for the auditor's office. We also have a number of changes to the budget that were made this year in both the mayor's office, and understanding that we have 2 elects coming in to new positions. We wanted to give them the chance to speak to their proposed budget. So Sam, at this time, if you can talk through overall, your goals, your intention for your office, as well as any comments you have.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman Frederick and members of the Common Council. Appreciate the opportunity to come in here as Chief City Auditor-elect and present on my vision for the office. So I want to start by saying I'm very excited to take on this role. As you know, the Auditor's Office plays a critical role in ensuring accountability and transparency in how city government operates. My goals for the office are centered on mainly conducting audits of city departments, strengthen accountability, increase efficiency, and improve how services are delivered, tracking and reporting how tax dollars are spent to promote transparency, ensure that public understands where their money is being spent and that resources are used effectively, and then sharing findings in clear and accessible ways through reports, presentations. Also want to get out into the community, do community outreach so people understand what the findings of our audits are. Also, a big part of the office, as you know, I'm sure, it's not just financial audits, but it's, as it states in the charter, it's performance audits, really looking at the processes within city departments. And that's something I find when members of the public ask me about the position. They're often, don't have a full understanding of it, or often kind of surprised, but also pleasantly surprised to hear about, all the possibilities when it comes to looking at city processes and how we can improve how they work, whether it's fixing the potholes to, addressing codes violations better, or, permitting processes. I think, people feel they want to see things, city government work more effectively and more efficiently. So to achieve these goals, I'm requesting a chief of staff position that would be extremely helpful in my office to help manage daily operations, coordinate projects, and keep the office running efficiently and effectively, freeing me to focus on leading audits and strategic initiatives. And I'll add that position, the chief of staff position is one, the audit office is one that I think it's what you make of it. My vision for it is a very public-facing office, getting out there in the public, also being very proactive in conducting audits, and this, having that position will really help us do that. I'll also add, it would be very helpful to have an additional auditor position as well to expand our capacity to just be proactive in conducting audits, looking at where funds are spent, whether programs are achieving their goals. So, again, I just want to thank you, members of the council, for, considering my requests, and, I appreciate the work that you do. And most importantly, I think I'm really looking forward to working with everyone here starting next year.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, so we have a lot of new attendees at this meeting, particularly for the Finance Committee. So just to set the stage, the way I prefer to run these meetings is going to committee first, getting questions from committee members. I'll defer my questions to last and then open up to other council members. So at this time, committee members, any questions, comments for Sam? Councilmember Keegan.
I just think it's helpful to note for the public that the budget does call for an additional part-time position over last year of a communications coordinator. And Sam, I don't know how long or how much you've been following our budget process. I'm assuming that you're asking for additional expenditures?
Yes.
Staffing increases?
Yes, I think there is potentially some money that could be moved within the auditor's office budget, which I can get into, but I am asking for additional expenditures.
Where would you propose to move those funds from?
There's some money that could be moved from under contractual expenditures, professional audit, there's 173,000. About 80 to 90,000 is required for there's a required annual audit. But I do plan to do audits in-house so that additional money other than the 80 to 90,000 could be moved towards these positions. But I understand it is also, either way, regardless, it is still an ask for an increase in expenditures. But I view that as an investment, because my goal for the office is to find ways we can do things more effectively and more efficiently and ultimately save taxpayer money.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Farrell.
Hi, Sam. Congratulations and thanks for coming in. So is this something, because the treasurer's office added a chief of staff, but their overall budget went down because they moved positions around. In general, it's easier to do something like that. Have you considered, because in a lot of offices, the deputy is a similar role to chief of staff. So have you looked at moving things around? And I also know that that's hard to do before you're in the office, but as you've been thinking about this, I'm just curious if you've considered, moving some pieces around there.
I'm always open to that. I mean, there are, in addition to my position, there's in the proposed budget 5 full-time positions, 1 part-time. So, there's not a lot of positions to move around. I understand that, yeah, the treasurer's office was able to do it in a way that had the same number of positions and I believe about the same budget. But I'm always open to whatever, if you have suggestions.
And I will say my perspective has always been we want people who are in positions of leadership in the city of Albany to succeed. We're all on the same page, so certainly in the Office of Audit, but we're also in a space where we're trying to navigate actually cutting things from the budget, so additions are a little bit more complicated right now. So, but happy to talk more about it and consider it.
Yeah, thank you. And I understand the position you're in. Of course, in my other role in the county legislature, I've been in that position where, yes, we're looking to cut things, or to be fiscally responsible rather than increase. But I do think, the auditor's office, I used to work there, and it does have more positions than in 2016 or 17 when I worked there. But the office has, I think, a lot more duties than people realize on a day-to-day basis, with all of the auditing of the vouchers, every invoice that comes through the city. That takes up a significant amount of time, and resources for that office. So I think, it is an investment that's worth it, that will really help me and my office achieve what we set out to achieve, and what I believe the voters express that they want to see from that office is to be more proactive in conducting these types of process audits.
Thank you. Councilmember Ballard.
Thank you, Cheryl. First, congratulations, Sam. Welcome to the city part of our city government. Unfortunately, we have a little bit more of you joining us in a year where we are finding ourselves really at a turning point, where we'll find ourselves we're going to be a little bit tighter with our resources that we have. Right now, the discussion, unlike in the last few years where we've been able to advocate for an increase of spending here or an increase of spending there, or trying to find some money for some new initiatives, this year we're trying to cut the burden on our residents. Try to find, we've had members who have said they're not going to vote for the trash fee increase, which is a significant part of our revenue. So we are trying to find compromise among our own body to get to a finished place. So I say that just to give you a little bit of background of if you haven't been following these our finance meetings, because that's a lot of what we've been discussing the last few meetings, is how can we get to a compromise. And I think we found a good one at the last one, where we're looking to leave the trash fee as is, but try to lower the levy of the taxpayers from a 3% to a 2%, which means we have to find either new revenue of about $650,000 or cut expenses. Now, I am always optimistic that our budget director, who has done excellent work for us throughout these last few years to make these numbers work, and our team here that's trying to figure it out, that we're going to figure it out. But I'm saying that because I just want to make sure you've got the background of when you're hearing these back and forths. You know, I think we all want you to be successful, and we're all happy that you are where you are. But well, first I also want to say this. You actually took a reduction in budget. So your budget last year was, the audit's budget was $853,661, and this year it shows $8,016,808. I'm being given a figure that may show me a different number, but
Yes, yeah, thank you for pointing that out, yeah.
that may be, that was from your, oh, okay, okay, okay. Well, yes, no, they cut the line, so, I mean, but there was more funding put into that last year than there is now. But we are where we are. We are where we are. So I guess I want to ask you, you mentioned professional audit. You said you could move, what? You could need at least 90,000 in that line?
You need about 80 to 90.
So that gives you,
Let's say 90,000 in that line to do the annual required third-party audit.
so that gives you $83,000 to work with if you wanted to move that around. You've got 10,000 in trainings. How much do you think you would need of that 10,000?
I think the training fund is important, is that?
Okay. So I guess
Because it's important that me and staff members have, continuous training.
So I guess what I'm talking about is, where do we have some flexibility in your budget to try to make it work for you, so that we can get you what you're looking for, but also keep it within the budget that's already in the book? Because if we don't find new revenue, the next stage is we need to find cuts. So I'd like to get it all worked out with people without having to find new revenue on top of new cuts. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I understand. And I'm glad you pointed out that the budget did decrease from this year to last year. Maybe it's possible to put it back to the previous year's level, but
I think the problem with,
Yeah.
unless the budget director gives us some great news,
yeah.
which I keep looking at him because I'm always looking for that great news, unless we get some great news about some new revenue that we may be able to find, to change this book, to add more would be very difficult. And that's difficult to say because there's some things I would like to be advocating for right now, much more strongly, that I can't, because it's hard for me to say we need these added expenses when we already have a difficult time paying for the expenses that are already in the book. But I wanted to put that out there as a potential way of starting to move some of your funding to make it work.
Councilmember Adams. Going to, sure, go ahead, Councilmember Kagan, point of information.
I just wanted to note, when we're looking at last year's contracted expenses or for the professional audit, that was increased by $75,000 specifically to support the work of the Workforce Culture and Ethics Committee. So in reality, the auditor's budget was much closer to that 175 figure because those funds were specifically allocated for a very specific purpose, and they were increased as part of our negotiations last year.
Thank you, Councilmember Keegan.
Thank you for clarifying that.
So a couple follow-up questions to you, and also just to contextualize a little bit what's being discussed here. Our city residents are facing increases, 3% property tax increase and doubling a trash fee. The committee stands thus far is that we want to focus on affordability for our residents. And so looking at that, currently we're exploring reducing the property tax increase to 2%. That equates to needing to find approximately $630K in our budget to reduce. So that just gives you some context about why it's hard to add when we're ultimately trying to reduce. But to your point, there's potential to move. So I just want to go back to your professional audit. You said 80 to 90,000 approximately. Is that based on historical results from the auditor that they provided to you?
Yeah, that's based on a conversation I had with the current chief city auditor.
Okay. So does that account for any inflation?
I'm not sure. I think it was somewhere in the $80,000 to $90,000 last year.
Yeah, it's been 89,000, so it potentially could be more than that. But.
Just as an external auditor myself, I will say fees are likely to go up. So I would try to protect that fund so that you're set up for success. Perhaps the solution is saving 95 in that category. That could leave you with potential to move, assuming that you're not doing any other external professional audits in your first year. Move that fund up to at least another auditor position on the lower side of the pay grade plus benefits. That gives you part of what you're looking for this evening to enhance your team, but also allows for the movement of funds. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I appreciate you working with me to try to find a solution. I am open to that. I think if I were to pick one position that's most important to me, it'd be the chief of staff position. I think that's most important for the office. But, again, I came in here, I wanted to, make the request for what I thought was best for the office, the resources I need, but I understand from your end that you have to consider the overall city budget and the finances and how to make things work. So, I understand this, it's going to be a back and forth to figure out what makes most sense in terms of the overall city budget.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, other council member questions, comments? Councilmember Conti.
Yeah, just a brief question. I don't know if you mentioned the dollar amount that you're looking for in terms of the new positions?
Well, I was thinking for chief of staff, the treasurer's office just was added a chief of staff position, which is at the W-12 pay grade, 104,810 to 148,140. It's not that I feel the chief of staff has to make that amount, but it seems reasonable that the position would be at about the same pay grade. And for the auditor position, there's an auditor position currently in the city auditor's office that's 56, sorry, I'm looking
So
at.
it'd be the same?
Yeah, same thing, 59,110 to 83,550.
Okay. I just wanted to get an idea in terms of what number you were looking at. Thank you.
Additional comments, questions from council members? Okay, we're going to circle back to any open items. Councilmember Ballerin.
Thank you, Chair. Quick question. Is the part-time communications coordinator, is that position filled?
No, that is a new position for next year that was added by the mayor's office. So that position is not currently in the auditor's office and is not filled.
Would there be an opportunity to combine some of that funding from your professional audits and take that position and make that your chief of staff? That combination may get you where you're looking for once you're looking towards it's not perfect, but it would get you
That-
the staff member that you're looking for.
Yeah, that's an option that I'm open to. I think, you know, chief of staff does fulfill some of those, some of that aspect of, you know, communications with the public.
I don't see that position in our sheets, so it doesn't give me what actual number we're working with, unfortunately. So,
Do you have the range? I have the range.
we've got the range, but we've got our cheat sheet that gives us the actual, and that position is not on that, unfortunately. Otherwise, I can give you a much cleaner number, but at least that gives you a range of what you're looking at.
And I was, because it's part-time, I wasn't sure if that range was, what the range would be for, if it were a full-time position or if that was the actual range.
We do have our budget director present. I believe that is, for the part-time position, half of that salary. Is that correct?
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I assumed based on the salary range, but it's helpful to confirm.
So there's some potential here, right? Movement of funds we're talking about from professional audit. So thank you for expressing that. Potential for communications with priority from your perspective of a chief of staff versus a auditor, but also a request for another auditor. So I think that covers essentially the comments for this evening, unless I see anything else. Okay, so we will deliberate, Sam. I'm happy to consider these requests, try to make sure that you're set up for success for your first year in office, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you inviting me here. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. At this time, we are going to actually have our mayor's office presentation.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Mayor-elect of Pliers. Welcome, and many congratulations to you. We look forward to all the great things that you will do in office.
Thank you so much, and thank you to our finance chair for the opportunity to talk more in depth about the 2026 proposed budget, but also some of the proposed positions. David and I are going to tag team this presentation, starting with the 2026 proposed budget by Mayor Kathy Sheehan. And David will then take questions. Following, I will talk about and present on the proposed positions in the mayor's office, and then take whatever questions, concerns, comments you all have. So with that, I will turn it over to David.
Thank you, Mayor-elect, and thank you, council members, for inviting us this evening. I know some of you were at Mayor Sheehan's presentation when she provided this slide deck on October 1st, so for the sake of brevity, I'll pretty much fly through this, but wanted to touch on a few key points because I think the context will really help to inform the conversation this evening around a few different topics. You know, as Mayor always starts with, at the end of the day, our mission is to serve the residents of the city of Albany and make sure that everybody who works for the city has the tools necessary to do that job and make sure that we're building a safe, healthy, and economically vibrant community. And that's part of the reason why we spend so much time preparing the budget and why the council spends so much time deliberating on the budget, because it truly is the guiding policy document for the entire year. And again, I want to thank the Common Council for your partnership over the years, and particularly when it comes to the budget and some of the more difficult financial decisions that we as a city have had to make, whether it was through the capital city funding challenges 2016 through 2018, whether it was COVID and some of the really hard decisions through that period, and then obviously advocating to help secure ARPA funding and make some of the critical initiatives, investments, I should say, that we are seeing almost complete across the city today. Again, when Mayor Sheehan took office, there were some really negative drivers when it came to the budget, whether it was the $15 million structural deficit, high levels of poverty, we were facing the impacts of climate change, the rainy day fund had been depleted, and 12 years later, we've been able to reverse those trends. The budget is balanced. The poverty rate is down 29%. We've been able to invest in sustainable practices, and the rainy day fund has been grown. And we've also addressed some of our aging infrastructure. We were facing the closure of the landfill. There were neglected public spaces. And again, we had a dot matrix system that was used from the 1990s to run payroll. And since then, we've been able to buy all our streetlights, convert them to LED, extended the life of the landfill to 2028, but it is going to close, and we'll touch on that in a little bit. And we've been able to open world-class amenities like the Lincoln Park Pool and soon, the West Hill Community Center. But the economic outlook, as we all know in the news, is still somewhat uncertain and potentially dire. Inflation is still at 3%, which is higher than it should be. The target is 2%. Our unemployment rate citywide is still at 4%. As you see in the news nationally, job growth is slowing, the layoff number is growing, and we're really at a period of time with the federal government shutdown that things are uncertain. And so this budget was made with that all in mind: uncertainty moving forward, knowing that we're in a precarious position, and there are a lot of factors that are outside of our control. And that's why this budget was a very, the growth was about $7 million, which again was not taken lightly. And looking back at some of the historical figures, I want to really highlight on this slide, the one that's most important, I think, and we'll touch on more later, is the 1.2% number. Every year since 2014, our tax levy has increased on average 1.2%. When you compare that to cities across New York State, that's less than half, or it is half. Most cities, they increase on average 2.3%. Our total spending is less than the consumer price index, so less than inflation. And our property tax rate has decreased by nearly double what other cities have across New York State over that time. So we've held the line on taxes. There have been years where Mayor Sheehan has proposed budgets of 0% increases to the tax levy. And again, I really want to emphasize the 1.2% number on this slide, because I think it's going to inform our conversation a little later about property taxes generally. And part of the reason why the levy is increasing is for a variety of expenses that have been added to our budget. We're finally beginning to pay back the obligations that the city incurred and that the Common Council approved as part of previous budgets to build the Lincoln Park Pool, to build Albany West Community Center, to refurbish the Albany South Recreation Center, to build the Washington Park Playground. That debt service is approximately $4 million larger than it was last year. We've had a $1 million increase to retiree health care, which again is driven by the economy, driven by factors outside of our control, but a real expense that we have to pay. We are obligated, we've made commitments to our former employees, and we can't decide not to pay that. Same thing with our debt service. We can't not pay it. We've made commitments to make these expenditures. And I know we're going to touch a little bit more on the mayor's office after, so I'm going to skip over that and also skip over the elected salaries, because we're going to talk about that later. But that is a small portion of that increase as well, approximately $150,000. The other thing is, again, we've seen some revenue decreases. We're finally at the end of our American Rescue Plan funding allocation. This will be the final year of realizing ARPA funding, and it's a $1 million reduction in revenue. We've also seen a reduction in pilot payment revenue, again, given some of the lack of new development that's occurring across the city. And so these factors taken together are many of the main reasons why Mayor Sheehan although not wanting to, nobody wants to propose an tax increase, but we were really in the position of having to propose a 3% tax increase, given all of these factors that, again, many of them are outside of our control, and many of them we can't do half of. We can't do half of retiree health care. We can't do half of our debt service payment. We can't recreate ARPA funding revenue. And we can't make new development occur on its own. And so that 3% really works out to, I'm going to go to the next slide, a 3% increase in the tax levy is approximately a $51 increase for a home valued at $250,000. For a business valued at $500,000, that's a $173,000 increase. And I just, again, want to point this out because one of the documents in your packet in front of you, we included a chart. It's this property tax levy versus 2% growth chart. And what this chart shows is the left column is what the estimated tax levy was over the last 12 years. So based on Mayor Sheehan's budgets, what was collected as part of the proposed budgets in terms of the tax levy. The column to the right of that is what the tax levy growth would have been had we increased the tax levy by 2% every year. And I'll remind you, a couple slides back, I talked about how we've on average only increased approximately 1%. So that growth that didn't occur, the 2% growth that didn't occur, results in approximately a $1,500 savings over the last 12 years. So while nobody's saying the $51 specifically for our seniors, our lowest income residents, many of whom are on fixed incomes, $51 is a lot of money. And we've been able, by holding the line on taxes, to save those property owners approximately $1,500 over the last 12 years. So I just want to make sure we're putting that into context for the bigger picture. Moving on to the trash fee, I'm showing this slide, and I think Gideon showed it already a couple meetings ago, but I think it bears repeating. The trash fee is designed to cover the cost of the expense of collecting garbage, and that is all. It's not to offset what isn't being collected at the landfill. It's not to offset lost tipping fees by extending the life of the landfill. It's truly to cover the cost of collecting garbage for our 1, 2, 3, and 4 family homes. And we haven't adjusted the rate since 2019. And so over time, that gap between expense and revenue has grown. And for years, we've been able to absorb it in our operating fund. But this year, given all of those factors that we talked about earlier, about the increases in expenses and the reductions in revenue, this year, we could not absorb a $2.5 million gap. And so Mayor Sheehan, again, proposed an increase to the trash fee, knowing that, it is not taken lightly. We understand that it is real dollars for our residents. We understand that, particularly, again, for people on fixed incomes, that is real money that they now have to budget. And I want to make sure that we're all keeping in mind that, our cost of $15 a month, approximately, is much less than private haulers that charge people who live in our surrounding suburban communities. It's much less than what the city of Schenectady charges, because they don't have a landfill, but we do. And it is approximately in line with what the city of Troy charges, because the city of Troy does have their own landfill. And so I say all that by way of reminding everyone that this is only going to become a more difficult conversation as time goes on, and we have to get closer and closer to a transfer station or whatever the next phase of solid waste is. This really is the phased approach, and reminding everybody that these conversations are going to get even harder as time goes on, and we're going to have to figure out how to make up that gap for when the landfill truly does close in 2028. The rest of the slides, I don't want to get too in the weeds with them, but I do want to remind people that we've been really good at securing other people's money. We've been really good at securing state and federal grants. $24 million of this budget is revenue driven from other sources in terms of expenditures. Every dollar that goes into this budget, approximately 75% of it is for people. And half of that is for police and fire. So right off the bat, we're talking about public safety, and we're talking about a police department that's reduced crime, is having an impact in terms of keeping our community safe, closing homicide case investigations at a rate nearly double the national average. We just unveiled a new initiative with Albany County Department of Health, where we have social workers responding to calls alongside police officers so that we can alleviate some of the burden on our officers. And so these programs all cost money. And again, I'm bringing this up because it's a reminder of, as we're having these conversations about property tax levies and the like, is that a huge portion of our budget is tied to public safety and tied to the resources that our officers need. Again, same thing with fire department. They're responding to nearly double the number of opioid overdose calls compared to the 3-year average. And we're trying to hold the line on taxes. We're trying to hold the line on expenses. And so to be able to do more, we need to have additional sources of revenue to be able to have those resources and bring them to bear. I know the mayor-elect will talk about the Youth Support Hub pilot program. That's $500,000 in this budget that we're hopeful that we're going to get grants for. But again, something that a new initiative that's going to cost real dollars to staff real community centers and have real employees tied to them. And again, it's many of these infrastructure improvement projects that council members have advocated for, community organizations have advocated for, new parks, new playgrounds, new spray pads. And so with that, I'm going to skip through the rest of this because this was a lot of what the mayor talked about the future, and I know we're not here for that, but wanted to make sure that we highlighted many of the fiscal points this evening. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. Does anyone have any questions for David's presentation? Not seeing none, so we will, and I'm sure some watched the playback as well originally. You do have a question? All right. Common Council President Coriolis.
Well, it's probably not a question, Madam Chair, so if you cut me off, I understand, because I do it sometimes too when we ask. I just wanted to say, the last 12 years, when I see this budget, and I'm speaking to our property tax owners, which I am one of them, that we, the last 12 years, I've served on a council in 2006 to 2008, where we saw property tax increases every year. Served on a council, past council, city where when we tried to block the expansion of the landfill, we asked the mayor at the time to make sure we expanded, that we pay down that debt while the landfill is still open. Also served on a council when we talked about not borrowing, not going to the state to borrow in lieu of taxes to balance our budget. I served on a council where we talked about not using our fund balance to balance our budget. And so Mayor Sheehan, one, we are paying down the landfill debt as it is open. Two, she has, and I've told voters this many times, our taxes have been kept down for the most part under 12 years of Mayor Sheehan, which is proven. We have a balanced budget, as you stated. So for me, when I look at the increase is, as you said, is for things that this council has fought for, the things that the community wanted to see. So yes, we might see an increase today because of the debt service. We have to pay what is due, the things that we've asked for. But as a whole, when you look at it as a whole, the things we're saving by paying down the landfill while it's still open, weaning our way off that revenue that we normally use to balance our budget is a plus. Holding line on the spending throughout the 12 years. And I think I've told you this, David, in private. I'm going to say it publicly. I think I told you that. I said Mayor Sheen's legacy, in my eyes, is about putting us on a safe financial footing going forward and investing in our parks and our recreation places. And this administration, no matter if I disagreed on different issues, the truth has to be told when the truth is told. And the truth of this budget, yes, there's an increase, but we have a new mayor-elect coming on. That new mayor-elect sees things that the office could do to move us further forward in how we communicate with our citizens, the things we need to make sure that things don't fall through the crack. And I think, you know, for years past, those positions used to fall on one person, which is a tough, and I'm pretty sure, David, you can attest to that. Sometimes, you know, the position of chief of staff is communications, government, and it's tough to run a city that's growing, that has the opportunities for all that to fall on one person. And so with this mayor's budget being at increase, taxpayers, remember, we always in this country used to pay now and we'll see the benefits later. And I believe that because this mayor's office has done those things that in the past, when we said, you know, the landfill's going to be closing, we extended the life of the landfill, which helped, which saved us money. We paid down the landfill while it was open, which saved us money. And you also was able to provide those park and recreation services that people definitely needed and wanted in our city to see our city move. So this presentation, when I was at the mayor's presentation, that all those things kept coming to my mind. And I don't want taxpayers to forget that. Where we were before, how we were balancing our city budget before was unattainable. Now we're in a position where, yes, there's a small increase, but it's setting us up for the future. And yes, there's going to be challenges because of federal government. We all understand that. But I think with this budget, it's put us in a place where we can begin that process of weeding and moving forward as a city. So thank you for this presentation. I just had to say that. So sorry, Madam Chair, I was a little long.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. All right. At this time, if no further questions or comments, that's always what I say as well, so that's on my behalf. Our left for David will transition to Mayor-elect Dorcia Fleers.
Thank you so much. Recently, I had the privilege of visiting Delaware State University, my alma mater. I went there for undergrad, and one of the things that the new president talked about was how they are moving the campus forward via athletics. And they made a huge investment by bringing former NFL player Deshaun Jackson on as their head coach. Now, of course, many of the alum were upset because he came with a huge price tag. But there was a contingency of alum and college leaders who felt that this was the step forward that the campus needed to make, and they are seeing return on investment. I bring that up because one of the things that the president said to us who had the privilege of being in that room homecoming weekend was that no longer can the campus continue to function using duct tape. And I would argue that as a city, we should adopt the same model. We cannot afford to move our city forward and be the capital city that everyone talks about when we are using duct tape to hold and piecemeal things together. And so my presentation is really talking about the blueprint for how we move the city forward, being more responsive, more proactive, and engaged as a city government. So from my perspective, the Albany residents have spoken. And I feel strongly that as mayor-elect, it is important that I hear very clearly what the mandate is, and not only hear it, but implement it. And for 3 years, I had talked directly to our residents, businesses on street corners, backyards, kitchen tables, living rooms, across our city from the 1st Ward to the 15th Ward. We have We conducted 50 meet and greets, which equated to touching 800 residents in our city, and that included some of our business owners. And the top concerns, you all are council members, you know, like I know, that the bread and butter issues are affordability, quality of life, public safety, public safety, public safety, housing, and people want to see Albany thrive economically. We are looked at as being behind as a city in so many ways, including not seeing the economic growth that our neighboring cities have seen. And so the bottom line, from my perspective, is that residents and business owners have said very clear that our city government has to address these concerns. We cannot afford not to. And how we address these concerns are really ensuring that we have, again, a more responsive, proactive, and effective city government. And in order to have that, we need people power. You can have a bold vision, great ideas, but without people to execute that vision and those ideas, it falls flat. Council President Ellis talked about David, and I'm going to put David on the spot here. For a very long time, David has not only been Mayor Sheehan's chief of staff, he has been her deputy mayor, he has been her comms person, he has been her intergov person, he has been her constituent service person, and all of us at some point during our tenure have called on David, and when balls got dropped, been pissed off at David. But the reality is, how do you put so much pressure and weight on one or two people and then expect the city to be looked at as a thriving city when we don't honor and respect the workforce that we count on to deliver those services? And so what I am proposing is that we staff up the mayor's office to reflect the demands and requests that our residents and business owners have desperately said that they want to see. I have very high expectations that I have to fulfill, and it is important for me to transition from campaigning to governing. And so in doing so, I am proposing 6 new positions. One, making sure that we fill that deputy mayor position. It's required by statute, and I know the mayor, for whatever reason, Mayor Sheehan did not want to fill that position, but I feel that it's very important that we fill that position, and I'll talk briefly in a moment as to why. I'm also proposing that the mayor's office have a counsel to the mayor and director of policy, a director of economic opportunity and development, a director of communications, a director of digital and community communications, and a director of intergovernmental affairs. The deputy mayor position, as shared, is required by law, but this person really serves as the mayor's right-hand top advisor. If you look at our department structure, most of our departments not only have a commissioner, but they have a deputy commissioner. Anyone in a leadership role should have a colleague at that executive level to bounce ideas off of, to work in tandem with, and that person helps to focus on a lot of the operational aspects of the mission, while the person who is at the helm is able to be forward-facing. I see that being the same for the mayor's office. In addition, we know that life happens. The pandemic happened, and people, unfortunately, when the mayor got sick or the Mayor Sheehan had places to be, people wanted to know, well, why isn't she here? People were looking for that executive level presence, and I think it's important that we realize that the mayor's office should be no different than some of our other departments, and that office deserves to have a second executive. When the mayor was away recently out of the country, there were some council members who said, well, if she's not here, who's left to make decisions? Questioning, where is that executive level leadership? And so this person stands in the gap and supports and implements decision-making on policies, programs, and oversees daily operations and coordinates with our city departments. Counsel to the mayor and director of policy. Some of the challenges that we have, and David talked about them, this is a very tricky political climate to lead in at the local level. I don't think it's a secret that we have an administration at the federal level that is not so favorable towards local government, and we are seeing things happen that we have not seen in a lifetime, including ICE raids, the SNAP benefits being taken away, significant education policy changes, funding that we've relied on for so long no longer being there. And so this counsel to the mayor and director of policy really allows in real time advising the mayor, advising me on legal challenges in the context of my policy priorities. We do have a corporation counsel's office, and we have a great team there. And I think it's important that that team is allowed to continue doing the great work that they're doing. In tandem, having a council who can focus on the policy mandates that are coming out of my administration. Director of Economic Development. You all have your ears to the ground. Albany, at this moment, our government is seen as being problematic when it comes to entrepreneurs and businesses. Every other week, we are in the paper with another business leaving, and some of them choose to blame their departure on City Hall, in particular, the mayor's office. This is a very challenging business climate. We are known for having a lot of red tape, and it is difficult to navigate as an entrepreneur or a business owner or a developer. People seem to be very confused about how you conduct business with the city and feel that if you know somebody, you are good. But if you are someone who doesn't have that number to call in City Hall, it is very challenging to get somebody on the phone or to navigate the red tape. And so this person, the Director of Economic Development, really serves as the point person for our entrepreneurs, for our businesses, for our developers. They should not have to run around when it's time to work with our city. In fact, my team would like to make sure that folks understand if you want to do business with our city, we want to make it easier for you. This person also will develop and implement economic development strategies, help to attract new businesses, really be forward-facing out in the community, not just locally, but across the state, across the region, across the country, and in some cases, across the globe. This person also will help to expand opportunities to benefit all residents in our city and all businesses, and improve responsiveness to businesses regarding their concerns and challenges. The Director of Communications and Director of Digital and Community Communications. When I talk to Mayor Sheehan, one of the things that she often shares is that in hindsight, she would have made more investments in communications. If you don't communicate it, it never happened. And so we have to do a better job communicating with the public about what is happening in our city. There are so many people who control the narrative about Albany, and a lot of it is not true. And so the challenges that we face as a city, one, confusion about City Hall's vision, policy, directions, or direction. Residents and businesses feel unheard and overlooked. There's a lack of information about key initiatives and projects, and there's been an erosion in trust between our residents and City Hall. That can be fixed. You fix that by constantly communicating with the people we are here to serve. And this is why beefing up our communications staff is so critical. And this is the hill that I'm willing to die on when it comes to advocating for these resources, so that we are more proactive with our outreach on the work that we're doing and the great work ahead, being responsive to our residents. We are maintaining and expanding media relationships, improving transparency and understanding of our government, how we work. We also have an increased population of people who don't speak English, and so they need to know what's happening on behalf of them. Expanding online presence. I cannot overstate or understate the importance of making sure that we have a fully staffed communications team that can carry the message forward about the great work that our city and this administration is looking to put forward, but also to tell the world about Albany being a great city. Director of Intergovernmental Affairs, some of our challenges. We have a communication breakdown with, as peers. Often I've heard that there is a communications breakdown between the Common Council and the mayor's office. And that breakdown also extends to our county ledge as well as our colleagues in government at the state level. Lack of representation in halls of power, not just here, but also in Washington. And then there's also a lot of unnecessary hostility between government partners. My administration is looking to change that and repair and rebuild relationships, and you need someone who has expertise in intergovernmental affairs to improve those relationships and expand those relationships and ensure that we have a seat at every table. The relationship piece is critical, and this person, this dynamic person will help us facilitate that. In closing, we have a city that we have to transform. I shared on election night, I am willing to do my part, put in the late hours, put in the heavy lift and the work to rebuild this city brick by brick. I need partners in government to do that. If we are not working together, we cannot accomplish that and move our city forward. So I thank you for your time. I thank you for your consideration and listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have about the proposed positions.
Thank you, Mayor-elect. Questions, comments from committee members? Councilmember Farrell.
Thank you so much, Mayor-elect Pliers, and congratulations.
Thank you.
And David, thank you also for your presentation and your work over the many years. Dorsey's right, you've worn a lot of hats and done a good job wearing them, and we appreciate it. So I will say, similar to really my stance with things is I feel like we're all part of the same team. We're all on Team Albany, and ultimately we want Albany to succeed. So from my perspective, although it is, my constituents definitely have a lot of questions about the why this person, that person, so this is helpful for that. But what I've said to everybody that asks me, whoever Mayor Pliers wants to have in her office that makes her want to succeed, that is great. I think everybody has a different leadership style. There are different choices that are made. Mayor Jennings had a deputy mayor. When Mayor Sheehan came in, she wanted a chief of staff over that position and then had that official appointed title go through different people, and now it's been with David for a few years. There's a lot of different reasons why any leader might make the choices that they make, and it's also something that, as we've spoken, you might completely change your mind in a year and say, you know what, when I came in here, it turns out I don't need this, this, and this, but I actually would have been great to have this position instead. From my perspective, it's not really questioning what you choose to have in that office, because I will say Mayor Sheehan has been very clear that these additions were made in communication with you, which I also appreciate from Mayor Sheehan. But my concern is on the other side, is on the revenue side. So we are in a position right now, as we're looking at impacts on our constituents, we have a budget that has a very high impact on our constituents. And we've been lucky that Mayor Sheehan has done. I completely agree with Corey's assessment. What the Sheehan administration has done in terms of our budgets really is remarkable, and we are so very fortunate for. But it doesn't change the fact that we are still the highest taxed municipality in the area, and we're always juggling, trying to figure out, how to navigate that, because we do have a lot of, we all know why. There's a lot of nonprofit land. It's a big burden on the people that do own property taxes. But as we go into this year where inflation is hitting people, tariffs are hitting people, SNAP is, and obviously different populations, but we are seeing a lot of very scary things for our constituency on that side. In addition, we just had a dramatic reassessment where half of the city's taxes went up dramatically. So looking at a tax levy increase at 3%, when there's people that had their taxes go up, I don't even want to, we all know the dramatically high percentages that some people had their taxes go up, and a lot of those homes were 2- and 3-family homes. So those property owners that own those, a lot of them are not the wealthiest people. So my concern is more the other side of it. Fully understanding that there's a lot of things that we can't do anything about. The debt service, the increase in our retiree health benefits, those are choices that we made. We're paying those off now. But I am very concerned about our property tax increase, and I'm concerned about the impacts on people of the increased trash fee. I've been very outspoken that I think it's actually something that should have been raising. That number will definitely go up after our landfill closes, and once all of the landfills close in New York, which will be very soon, it will go up again. And we will still be paying less than all the other municipalities with commercial hauling. So, but my concern is not, I want you to have everybody that you need, but I guess my concern is the other side of it, because I don't think, regardless of whether or not our taxes would have been higher if the Sheehan administration had gone up to the 2% or gone as high as they could year after year, they fortunately didn't. They left our constituents in a better situation when it came to property taxes. And I will say, from the beginning of my term, almost 8 years ago to now, I hear less complaints about property taxes dramatically, and a lot of that is because of the low property tax levies that happened. So it's just something, as we're looking at the economic outlook, I want to make sure when we're hiring positions that it's something we're actually going to be able to sustain. I personally am concerned about our state aid because, while we are not dramatically hit by federal taxes, the state is. And this upcoming year is not forecasted to be as bad, but it's supposed to be bad, but 2027 is supposed to hit us pretty hard. So I'm worried about our capital city funding. I'm worried about what those numbers look like and if we would eventually have to have layoffs at the city level, because I think that my concern is that in 2 years, we're gonna have to start doing layoffs. So that's, when we look at our economic forecast, I think that you've created a great team. And I love, there's a great logic behind every single position, and I'm not surprised by that at all. I've known you for a very long time. You've always been very thoughtful. You've always gone into things with a measured perspective and taken your time and thought through things. So I would never have expected any of the positions, to be something that wasn't needed. My concern is that in a short period of time, we're going to have to be cutting a lot. I am also a little bit more sensitive to it because I was on the school board and president of the school board when we had to do massive cuts after the gap elimination adjustment. And it was terrible. And it was terrible for our kids, and it was terrible across the board, but we had no choice because the money wasn't there. So that's my own assessment with it. I wouldn't even presume to say all of these positions make perfect sense. They don't. Again, I want you to have the tools that you need, but I also want to make sure that we're able to sustain every position that we have in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So it's not really necessarily anything that you need to respond to, but those are my concerns as we look at this budget overall and adding any positions anywhere. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman Farrell. And one of the things that I didn't think about at the time as Chief City Auditor during the pandemic was how those lessons would help to inform my perspective as a city leader. We all were here. I had a unique view as city auditor during the pandemic, and you talk about uncertain times. We did not know from moment to moment what was going to happen. And again, a nod to Mayor Sheehan, who helped to steer this ship during some really rocky times. No one was laid off. And in fact, she was the one that took the hit because she decided not to take her own salary to ensure that some of our lowest paid workers did have income coming in. But even during those uncertain times, the city of Albany, with the team, folks who are behind me, others who are not here, huge shout out to Darius and Ken and some others, we navigated rough terrain and came out on the other side. And so when those difficult decisions have to be made, I am prepared to make them and will be prepared to make them. What I am essentially doing is given the information that I have in front of me today, positioning my administration to succeed, and we don't know what tomorrow holds. However, learning from lessons from the past, this city and this city government and the teams that have been assembled, I am not at all concerned that we will not be able to rise to the occasion and make the necessary decisions at that time. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Keegan. Nope. Councilmember Ballerin.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for, one, taking your time to meet with us. I know this isn't the budget that you put together, but I know this is a budget your office is going to have to administrate. So thank you for, one, congratulations.
Thank you.
And two, thank you for being here, but also thank you for your willingness to take on this role, because, like it's been stated earlier, I am of this view, and I'm sure you know better than anyone else, that we are going to head through some turbulent waters in the next few years, financially. And we've been through some difficult times, and we've been able to navigate ourselves through it. Part of those navigations was adding new fees. And I know we can be very proud of the fact that we haven't raised taxes more than 2%, but we've increased fees that were not there 10 years ago. And those who were here, and I wasn't here 10 years ago, know how difficult that was, and know the pain that, and through the process when we had to do that. And my concern is that we're continuing going to that area while being able to say that we're not increasing the tax levy. And that's something I'm concerned about. And my biggest concern, to be honest with you, has been the same concern I've had since day one. The closing of the landfill means we're going to lose revenue and we're going to increase expenses. So to me, it's like losing a house that had 3 rentals that you lived in for free, and you used the rentals to pay off whatever you could, and now you've lost that house, and now you've lost that revenue that came in, and now you need to pay for a new house. So I am very concerned about that, and I'm very concerned about how we're going to navigate that without putting more of a burden on our residents. Because that to me is always where I'm looking at. I'm always looking at how is it that decisions we make and the actions we do, how does that affect people on the ground? How does it affect them where they live and where they're home? So those are some of the challenges that I think we're going to have. And I guess my question is, you're putting your team together, and you're asking for an additional investment on this team, and you're looking for the best of the best. Can you give us some hints or some perspective of how this team will help bring new revenue that is not putting a burden on our residents? How this team can bring in new resources that maybe we haven't looked at before?
Thank you, Councilman Ballerin. Just to your point about 10 years ago, I sat in that chair right there, and I still have the scars to show for the challenge that came with the trash fee. It was a very challenging time. It was exposing and introducing residents to a fee that they had never had to pay. And I don't think there's one council member who sat in these seats at that time who would say that it was a cakewalk. It was very difficult. Richard was here, Kelly was here, but we made it through. And I think that the importance in this is messaging. I don't know what city you can live in America and not expect increases in taxes and fees. If there is one, please direct me to that city. Unfortunately, our residents bear a disproportionate burden of taxes because we are the capital city with so much of our properties being non-taxable. And so we do have to balance that because our residents feel that they are already shouldering their fair share and more, punching above weight, and yet here we come having to raise taxes and fees. But I think it's important for us to be mindful of the message as city leaders, because for residents to expect that there will be no tax increases and no fees, I just think that that's unrealistic. The Mayor Sheehan has been acknowledged tonight for doing so in a very minimal way versus what we're seeing in some other municipalities where they're making decisions to significantly increase taxes and fees drastically. And so I just say that because I do not want to come in as the next mayor of this city and put out messaging that we will not have to, at some point, increase taxes and raise fees. It sounds good, but as David just talked about, and David can chime in here as needed, the city absorbed and ate the cost because the mayor and her team did not want to pass those fees on to our residents. But the bills still have to get paid, and we have to be mindful that we don't cause a situation in which the levees break because we are eating and absorbing costs that we can't afford to pay because we don't want to increase taxes and fees. I think it is a natural part of this ecosystem that we call living in a community, but I think that you do it in a way that is with integrity, transparency, and also understanding that incremental people can accept. It is when you hit people with these ridiculous large fees at one time. I have had residents say, I don't mind paying incremental increases, but when you just hit me over the head with a huge fee, I'm not prepared for that. And we know some of our residents are living paycheck to paycheck. The team that I talked about assembling, I am putting together a dream team, but this dream team can't do it alone. We cannot move the city forward, see the economic growth that we want to see if I don't have the support from colleagues like you, Councilman Ballerin. There are policy decisions that will need to be made that I can't make solely and my team can't make solely. Those decisions will be deliberated and made in this room. And so I start with that because it will take all of us to do the work. But I hope that my presentation made the points that, one, when it comes to businesses, we will be out there beating the bushes saying, yes, Schenectady's cool, Troy is cool, but you need to invest in Albany. Bring your business here. This is why you should bring your business here, and we are doing the work to make sure you have an easy transition to invest in our city. I've talked to so many developers and businesses who say, and entrepreneurs who say, it takes too much money, time, and energy navigating Albany's government. And so I'd rather just take my business elsewhere. Having a person whose focus is helping those businesses navigate and really beating the bushes to talk about investing here, I feel very confident will go a long way. In addition to InterGov, our governor is looking at Albany. We have received an early Christmas gift in the form of $400 million and $200 million to breathe life into our downtown. We need to maintain those relationships with the state legislature. They have been asking me, what can we do to support Albany? We live here 6 months out of the year, but we don't really have connections with the elected officials in Albany. Despite the fact that we live here, they want to see Albany win. And so we will, my administration, will be talking and communicating with them to say, this is your home too, and like all of us, we want to fight for our home together, and we need their support. So those are just some examples. Repairing relationships, telling our story. I talked about communications. We have so many outside people telling the world about Albany. Albany is this, Albany is that, Albany is unsafe. Albany, somebody said, Albany is a city that I feel that should be flushed down a toilet. I mean, we have people saying some really vulgar and negative, nasty things about our city. And we need to control that narrative, and we do that when we have the proper staffing, the proper comms to get the word out about our city and why all of us choose to live here and call it home. And I can go on, but I want to end how I started. That team and the city employees can't do it alone. We need our colleagues in this room to help us move the needle and transform our city.
Thank you for that, Dr. Pierce. I don't know, Mayor-elect Dr. Pierce? I will say this, when I saw the proposal of positions, I was very excited to see a director in the governmental affairs. I do think we need to continue to push to get our fair share from the state. I do think we need to continue to push to get our fair share from the federal government, and I hope we actually get that, because I think if we do get our fair share, that gives us the additional revenue that we need to really be able to do what we need to do, deal with the stresses that we're going to be finding, and not put the burden on our neighbors. So I appreciate that, and I look forward to the hard work ahead.
Thank you.
Okay. This time I'm not seeing further questions from committee, so questions from me. And first and foremost, thank you for the thoughtfulness in this presentation, really thinking through your transition and what you need to be successful, and what the city needs to be successful. So appreciate the diligence that has been done and all the work ahead that will continue to come as you step into this role. My question is related to communications, and I'll start by saying as well that in conversation with Mayor Sheehan, she has also shared with me that communications is a place where she felt like she could have done more, getting the message out to residents. That being said, my first question is actually to David Gallen here joining us. Previously, there was a director of marketing and a part-time marketing coordinator. I assume that communications fell within those two roles, probably also your role as well, in many ways. But can you just speak to those roles, what they did, and ultimately, did you feel like their plate was too full in terms of being able to get to everything?
And to clarify, I mean, yes, historically, the chief of staff role under Mayor Sheehan has been the de facto communications director, press secretary. It's, for many years, it was also the social media role, the person who, previous to the neighborhood services department being created, Sarah Camp was the special projects coordinator, and she would help with some of the social media and creating of flyers and things like that. But it really took a life of its own, as Mayor-elect Pleers mentioned, really during the pandemic, it became that much more important to get the word out, and social media has become so much more of a really a full-time job. Like when I first started, it was post a couple times a week, and you kept your eye on if there were some comments or questions about different initiatives, and that was kind of it. And now it has become, I really do believe, a full-time job. To answer the question about the marketing director, yes, it has been a huge help having our marketing director. I think Nyla's done a great job of branding the city, of branding different city publications like the budget book, like our slide decks, our flyers. Everything has a feel and a look. We've changed our city logo to reflect our history, but also our city colors. And at the same time, Nyla, I think, without saying, does not have enough hours in a day to also do all the social media that's necessary, the reaction, the culling through comments of people asking questions about the trash fee, the tax increases, the this, the that, being able to respond to them timely. People get frustrated because they think that nobody's responding to them. And we haven't even touched on the more traditional press media side of the job. You know, in my role, and also as in our deputy chief of staff's role, you know, with me being in North Carolina last year and being out of the office a little bit more lately, has also helped with the press side of the job. But it really is a full-time job. Being able to pitch stories, to be able to have build those relationships with reporters and with news directors. Right now, when we have those interactions, it's someone reaching out with a question, wanting to set up an interview with the mayor, but there are not enough hours in the day to be able to say, hey, let's pitch a story idea, or hey, can we talk more about this particular issue that you have questions about, or you may want to have more of an understanding of. There's literally not enough time in the day, and we're on to the next thing. And so I do think from a communication standpoint, I would echo what everyone has said, including the mayor. I think that's definitely an area where we could have done a better job, where we could have been much more proactive, much more intentional, and much more direct. And particularly on the social media side, being able to engage with residents, being able to engage with local organizations, to engage with basically local influencers, for lack of a better term, people who have a following, who can get the word out, and who can tell the story in a truthful and accurate way. I think a lot of the time when we're engaging with social media from the mayor's office, it's to combat misinformation or combat negative information that maybe the whole story is not there. And it can derail a day, it can derail a week, it can be very consuming, and then we're on to the next thing. And so I think having a full-time person, really would be helpful in that regard. I should say full-time people, because again, it's press, it's social media, it's the brand and the feel of all the city initiatives, and it is much more than one person can do in their normal role without having to put up a cot in the office and basically live here.
Thank you. The follow-up question to that, Mayor-elect, is related to the new positions there, and more so from a public awareness, public knowledge perspective. So I assume the director of marketing position that remains is purely focused on the comments that David Gallen made, our branding of our city, getting your materials put together, the look and the feel, like true marketing in itself. Can you further clarify the specific roles and responsibilities that you will have for both the Director of Communications and the Director of Digital and Community Communications? What will be the differences between the two?
Great question, and I can ensure that in addition to my remarks, you all get the job descriptions for each of those positions. I have those job descriptions. I think David really laid out in a very comprehensive way the different aspects of communications. I had to learn the hard way, coming off of a 3-year campaign, that just because someone has expertise in communications, it doesn't mean that they have expertise in all aspects of communications. And so the Director of Communications really serves as that press secretary, that person who has a grasp and understanding of the media, the news outlets, can draft press material, which in itself is a skill set. That person has expertise in crisis communication. As David talked about, one story can alter your whole week. And not having someone who has the expertise to help with crafting the message, that can make or break. It can make or break an administration. And so that person is higher level, point person for media inquiries, crafting the larger communications plan for the administration, and setting the framework for the subsequent communication staff, marketing, community-centric position is really boots on the ground. This is a different era of communicating with residents, and we have from our young people to our seniors, very unique needs in between. And so this person will be skilled in social media, which in itself is a skill set. Every other week, we learn about a different platform. And so that person will have the expertise to navigate those platforms, be more engaged with our different constituency, communicating with them and coming up with messaging and helping to inform branding based on what we're hearing from our constituency. So that position is more community-facing, out in the community, capturing content and being responsive to content versus the director who is someone higher level, implementing, helping to set the tone and implement our communications plan, and really focused on that crisis communication, working with the media outlets, et cetera, and prepping me to be able to do so.
Thank you for the clarification. At this time, if no further questions from committee, I will turn to council members. We'll go Councilmember Hoey.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mayor-elect Dorsey and David, for being here. You know, there's not many in this room that remember President John F. Kennedy when he was elected. I was a wee child at the time, but one thing he said was, we got to pass the baton on to a new generation. And I see you as this new generation, and I'm 100% behind giving you the tools that you need to do the investment in the city that will bring in revenue and make us a better city. And the number one, we're the capital city, and we need to reflect that to the, to the state and to the country. And again, listening to you tonight, I see the glass half full. We got to fill it, but we're half full and we're almost there. So yes, I definitely want to do it. But for the public, a lot of people don't understand what's going on. We talk about inflation, we talk about, taxes going up, but we've said several times tonight about COVID. And COVID was like, it's going to be historic. 100 years from now, they'll be talking how we survived it. And one of the reasons that we did survive it was we printed a lot of money, like $4 or $5 trillion worth of money. When you print money and you have nothing backing it, that's when you get your inflation. And we're seeing it. We're seeing it throughout the city. We see housing prices. The price of a house, I was looking Sunday, houses that used to sell for $150,000 are now $350,000, $400,000. So people out there, our taxpayers, have to understand this was unusual circumstances that caused this increase. And, wages have gone up, not as much as the housing, but everything goes up. Social Security goes up. And I know it's tough, but it's important that people understand that we are doing the best with what we got. And I see your administration, and I'm hoping, and I'm going to be behind you and praying that we can start doing stuff, making this city unique, bringing in new revenue, and going out there and trying to show that we're investing today in this budget. We're investing, but next year we're going to have a lot more because we're doing the right things right now, and your administration is, and I really appreciate it. But there is a question or an ask. The council needs additional staff also, and we'll hold off for a year, but I'm hoping next year that we can get like another council to back up Mr. Wenner, and some more with the legislative side. And what happened, I just got to get this out, that we lost our counsel. He went part-time back around January to work for the legislature, and that really hurt us. And we lost 2 staff members on the council staff. And in the meantime, we were bringing the CPRB into the city government. We didn't have the support staff behind us. So we had some hiccups, but we're beyond that now. And I'm just asking next year, when you're doing the budget, please consider the council that we need extra stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Hoey. And I am saying now, yes, I agree that you all need proper staffing. When I was on the city council, I advocated for every raise for our staff, our city clerk, from Michelle to Kashana. I was someone in those rooms advocating to ensure that we properly pay our staff, but also expand the staff. It's hard being a part-time council member with full-time responsibility. I've done it. I did it for 6 years, and with children. It is a lot of work, and people don't know that you're part-time. People will call you on the Sunday because the dog won't stop barking. So, yes, I'm with you all. You need staff, but also when I was here, I advocated for the council to have the support of the National League of Cities. You have to buy into that. There is a fee for cities. I fought like hell to get it. And then the next year, I transitioned off. No one, I don't know what happened, but it just kind of went away. But the purpose of having the support of National League of Cities, when council members don't have the time to do research, they have a whole arm of lobbyists and staff that provide support to electeds because they understand that we don't always have the time to research and do all the things. And so I also think it's imperative to look at other resources like NLC to support the council and the council's work. I also advocated to increase the professional development line as a council member because I think as a council member, you also need investment too. You need to be able to go to trainings. I think at the time when I was here, it might have been, Richard, you would know, $1,000 or a little less, and I advocated to have more money for council members to be able to go get out of Albany, go to a training. And so I say all that to say I support you, and because I've walked in these shoes, I understand you need staff and support to do your work.
Councilmember Conti.
Thank you. And congratulations again. Of course, we all want you to be successful and have the resources you need to be a success. And as I think I've communicated to you before, I mean, there are significant challenges ahead in terms of, threats from the federal government, potential reductions in state aid, and the whole financial base and how to deal with all of that. I think your service on the council, though, is also an asset because you understand how the members of this body operate and what we hear from our constituents and the challenges, et cetera. We're kind of like we really have our ears to the ground more so than citywide officials, not to knock citywide officials, but just we're there in the neighborhood. And we are 24/7 accessible, things of that nature. So that relationship is really important. And I think, as I say, I think you're well positioned with your experience here to understand and appreciate that and to hopefully build that relationship and that partnership is which sometimes I hear we're separate checks and balances. Yeah, we are separate. We do have our checks and balances, but we have a responsibility, the three different branches of government, to work together because we have to be partners to make things work. And I've long advocated for deputy mayor position. When I was my prior service here, when Mayor Jennings was here, I had a good working relationship with the deputy mayor, Phil Calderon, at the time. And, we were really able to move things, get things together, and I think that's a valuable position. I'll be interested in the job descriptions. One position, I don't want to get really discussion now, but one position is the council position to the mayor and how that interacts with the law department, because I just see some things here that looks like, I don't know, they kind of cross over to some of the statutory requirements that the law department has as the city's chief lawyer, et cetera. And so that's one area that I'd really be interested in terms of seeing how that works. otherwise, you know, and I think we were both very immersed in the trash fee discussions back then, and we both have probably the same amount of scars on that one. So you know that was a very difficult issue. I always felt that whenever we do user fees, the fees should never exceed the cost of the service we're providing. And fees should not be seen as a way to increase revenues beyond the service that we're providing just to offset other costs. It's not fair, and that's, I think, also what comes in terms of businesses and others who want to deal with the red tape, and they deal with the fees, and the fees keep going up, and I don't quite understand that. But I think fees are legitimate when they cover the cost of a service that goes to a particular entity or constituency and is not supporting, and you know, a broad-based, not a broad-based tax that everybody pays. Those broad-based taxes should not be used to finance services that are for particular items, things of that nature. Yeah, so that's, you know, associating myself with some of the remarks that Councilmember Farrell made, you know, I think we all share those concerns. And it's going to be a challenge moving forward. And sometimes I'm worried about the future and where we're going. We need to move forward. I'm hopeful that you're going to be able to do that. But as I say, you know, and I think I've communicated that to you before. It's just, I love the city. I'm not from here. I consider this my home now. I'm not planning on leaving. But I see the challenges ahead, and I'm hopeful that you can move forward and address them and everything else. So I guess that's what I want to say.
Thank you. And the job description I'll be able to share, and that way you can crosswalk that position in comparison with Corporation Counsel and some of the attorneys we already have.
Council President Ellis.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Dr. Pleers, for, you know, really pointing out what your vision is. And as many people know, a budget is an investment in our future. And I believe with these new positions, that is an investment in our future. I'm tired of people saying Albany's 25 years behind the times because how we operate. And I think these positions will pay off in the investment, especially the economic development position, especially the intergovernmental position. I believe that these positions will allow us to be out in front and not wait for things to happen. The intergovernmental position will be out in front of what's going on in the Capitol, so you could make decisions on that in-time basis and not on a basis of someone finally comes to the mayor's office and said, did you know this is going on in the Capitol? So this is where I think we missed the point. This is where those investments are going to pay off. We're going to be out in front of a lot of things and not behind. And David, you know, I'll say this, I commend you again, because when we look at the communications and the chief of staff, you were burdened with all those things. And then people will call me and say, well, David hasn't gotten back to me. And I well, you know, he's doing A, B, C, and D. And I think this is the point of moving the city forward into a new era and a new generation of how we're going to be able to stave off the negative and put out the positive things that are happening so our constituents will understand. And with Richard, when you talked about the fees, Richard, and David says, you know, the trash fees is to pay for the operation of collecting trash. When that is communicated to voters, they're like, oh, it's a different message. But the only time we get to talk about those things is during a budget or during an election. You have a communication director, someone who's now they're on that. You have a policy director, they're on that constantly. So you're way ahead out in front rather than waiting for a budget conversation or an election to come about. And that's where these investments are going to pay off. That's where you're going to see the negative little conversations begin to go away, because we're going to be out in front, because you have people who are dedicated to doing that job and not being pulled in 8 different directions. But I would like to ask you, Dr. Pleers, an intergovernmental director, will this person be, because I know when we were on a council, when I was on a council, we used to always say the mayor's office should have like a lobbyist person. Will this person be charged with that as well?
To some extent, ideally, the city should have a lobbyist, in my personal opinion. I see the two related, but I also see some unique differences between the intergov person and someone's position who is just to lobby on behalf of the city, not just here, but in Washington. When I've given my national network of colleagues across the country, many of my colleagues, their municipalities have a lobbyist that they've hired. That's how they learn about grant funding coming down the pike from Washington and other places. They have their tentacles everywhere, finding out about resources that in turn help to advance their city. And I think that when we make those investments, we'll see a return because we can apply for those grant dollars and bring additional revenue. We are establishing relationships with people who are looking to make investments in cities. And if you're not at the table, if you're not having those conversations, if you don't have those relationships, you and your municipality are getting passed by. I've seen it. And so ideally, it would be great to have a lobbyist as well, but this person will do some of that initial foundational work to help make those connections for us from Washington Ave to Washington, D.C.
Thank you. And in closing, I would like to just say, as a council president, probably my two most proudest moments of government was during COVID, was one, and where we saw the council leadership and executive leadership really, and you were part of those discussions, really come together, and we knew what we were up against. And we were strategizing about layoffs and how do we go about that? How do we make sure it's fair and just? And I saw our government work. And it worked because we were all on the same page. And we were talking, we were communicating with each other constantly. It was not the mayor, hey, this is what we got to meet again. And so that was a proud moment where we were able to get through that. And I never forget it. And the second thing is how we began the council and the mayor's office increase salaries in the city of Albany. People were doing great work, but most of our jobs was way behind. And we were able to do that. We were able to increase and create salary ranges in every position in the city. And we still kept spending, we still kept taxes down. And so that's why I want people to really soak this all in. This 3%, yes, is an increase, but there was so much work and so much savings we did prior to this, where this 3% increase, yes, an increase, but we have to realize we did other things where there wasn't increase, and we helped the city, and we helped the budget, and the mayor's, and the council. We put things in front of the mayor's office, certain budget items, we figured out how to get things paid for, and I believe this budget, which is in front of us, to make sure that our new mayor has the ability to implement her vision and move this city forward. So I'm thank you for being here. I thank all the council finance committee, because I know you guys have a tough job, and your constituents will be calling you on this budget, but I think there's things that you can talk to your constituents about, how we've come to this state today, but the ways we helped save the city and helped save the city money throughout the years. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just to respond to one thing you brought up, Council President, you know, I like to joke that one of the only times my wife Kaylee and I argue is over when I'm answering a phone call at 9 p.m. from some people, some of whom may or not be in this room. I won't name any names. And to your point, I've lost track of the number of times somebody in this room has called me and I can't answer. And I think that having, and this is me personally speaking, having that person who can be that point of contact, who their mission is to be the person that's communicating with the body regularly, that's communicating with members of the council, of the state ledge, of county government, federal government, et cetera, having that person who that's their role. And, we talked about marketing being 3 full-time jobs. I really do, if I parsed out my day, I could come up with a whole 40-hour schedule probably of all the different times where whether it's a phone call, an email, a text, a conversation, where all that happens, and then there's so much more that doesn't happen because myself or our deputy chief of staff or director of operations doesn't have the time. And so I think you bring up a good point of wanting that to enhance, that level of service to be enhanced, and can say as the first and foremost person that's been my primary responsibility, and sometimes I've let each and every one of you in this room down. And so I think having that conduit, I really do think it would be a positive for moving the city forward. And one other thing that you brought up as well as Councilmember Conti, with the trash fee, I want to make sure I'm acknowledging the fact that, yes, there's the concerns about not raising a fee more than what an expense costs. And to this budget's credit, the proposed trash fee would raise $4.8 million. The cost of our trash pickup operation is $5 million. So there are $200,000 of expense that is being borne by the general fund, by part of that property tax proposed increase. And again, not something that's being taken lightly, but wanting to point out that the trash fee will not exceed the cost of trash. It truly is to pay for the cost of trash, which is of trash collection, which, to Councilmember Hoey's point, is going up because the cost of everything is going up. The cost of gas, we all see it at the pumps. Our DGS contractors that sell us fuel are seeing it too. The cost of parts for trucks, the parts of health insurance, the cost of the PPE that our DGS employees need to do their job safely and to be out on a route at 3 a.m. beginning to pick up trash and recycling. Those all continue to go up. And so bearing that in mind while also remembering that the trash fee revenue does not exceed the expense of trash collection. Thank you.
Thank you. One thing additional to note, because we've had some conversation this evening in different regards about the property tax increase, is as a committee, we are looking holistically as the impact to residents. And one of the first things you shared, Mayor-elect, was when you talked to residents, when you were boots on the ground, when you were doing the campaign, hard work for 3 years, one of the top concerns you mentioned was affordability. And so we are looking holistically at the impact to both property tax increase of 3% as well as trash fee increase doubling for a single family household, $90, in addition to property tax. And we're really looking at that affordability measure and saying, how can we look at this budget strategically to bring down some of that consolidated cost, understanding that the trash fee should be offsetting the cost, and it hasn't for years. So I want us to think of it holistically when we talk about those two topics, because that's really the position of this committee in trying to make sure that we are addressing the affordability crisis that our residents have. Any additional comments or questions for Mayor-elect or Chief of Staff? Councilmember Ballerin.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I just want to say something that's already been said, is I think the reason some of us are getting so much heat for the increase in the fee is because it's become such a 100% increase versus it being a 10 or 20% increase that came over the amount of time. And I think that's part of why we're taking some heat. Not as much heat as you guys took 10 years ago or 7 years ago. I'll give you that. I'll give you all that. But we are taking some heat on that. And I do think in the future that we take the annual hit of the $10, $15, I think is better than, and also helps people budget a little better. And I get, we had ARPA funding, we had other resources, people were going through, you know, we're just coming out of COVID. I get it. I mean, look, I'm gonna concur with what President Ellis said. I mean, I think one of my proudest times serving was during COVID. You know, I really saw this city come together. I saw this city, I saw this county, I saw us willing to take pay cuts to save staff. I saw us working on Zoom meetings. I remember many Zoom meetings with you and community leaders. You know, I saw us risk our own health, giving out, you know, masks and you know, it really, you know, we came out of some difficult times. So we've been through difficult times before. I think we're gonna have some rough waters ahead of us financial, but I'm optimistic of what we have in front of us. Thank you.
And Councilmember, just to thank you for that, because I think you're 100% right. And of the people we hear from that are concerned about the trash fee, that's the biggest concern, is the drastic increase at one time. And to Councilmember Farrell's point, we did not phase it in, and I know that Councilmember Farrell was an advocate for phasing it in, and you know, in the moment, all of the factors that you just laid out, Councilmember Ballerin, COVID, inflation, uncertainty, in those moments, Mayor Sheehan made the decision not to raise it because we didn't know if we were gonna have to lay people off. We didn't know if, frankly, we didn't know if President Biden was gonna be elected to be able to deliver on the American Rescue Plan. And thankfully he was. And then, you know, again, inflation was occurring. So it was continuing to be a decision we were able to put off because of our fiscal position. And I think at the same time, hindsight being 2020 and knowing that what we know now, I think the easy, if we could go back in time, we would have phased it in because we wouldn't have a drastic increase like we're proposing right now. So I just want to acknowledge that and very much, you know, say we hear you too. We agree that the 100% increase is something that you know, we do not take lightly, and acknowledging the fact that if it were phased in, this would be a potentially a 20% increase if it were split over 5 years. Hindsight being what it is.
Anything else? Okay. I want to thank you for your time this evening, answering these questions, getting the clarification that we all needed in this room, but also the public and our city needed for these additional positions. We wish you the greatest and most success in your new position. We know that you will do great work for our city, and we're excited to see what will come. Also want to thank Chief of Staff for joining us this evening and providing clarifications as well. At this time, if no further comments, we will transition to Corporation Counsel, who has been very graciously waiting this evening.
Thank you.
All right, so we're ready to go.
Hi,
We're just gonna
yes.
skip the slideshow. Yep.
Good evening, and technical difficulties are always a fun time. Thank you very much for your patience this evening. I know we went a little out of order of agenda, so without further ado, I'll hand it over to Mr. McGee as well as our budget director, and again, appreciate your patience this evening.
Yeah, please, it's our pleasure. So good evening, everyone. So my favorite part about working for the law department is that we get to play a support role to really all the work that the city's doing, whether it's the departments, this body, whether it's our partners in community stakeholders or outside agencies. We get to play a role in all of it. And we do that role by providing, and defer to the first slide here, our goal is to provide clear, practical, legal guidance to the folks that are doing the work for the city so that they can do their jobs as efficiently and equitably as possible. We do this on a day-to-day basis by addressing problems as they arise, but also by representing the city in court settings and by generating a general just awareness among the city employees and the public of the city's legal operations and how they work. So to do that, moving on to the next slide, we have our kind of 6 core functions. We have first, advice and counsel. So we provide advice to city employees and the public, well, not legal advice to the public, but we're there to answer questions and give people, a path forward to get to where they want to go. We do city code enforcement prosecutions. That includes building codes, obviously, but also vehicle and traffic law violations, general city ordinance violations, and others. We do compliance and risk management, so we try to stay engaged with what the city's doing so we can identify problems that are coming down the road. We can identify legal pitfalls as well as legal opportunities that are presented by changes in the law so that we can do things better. We oversee contracts and procurement, so any professional services contracts, we oversee those. We oversee the RFP process. And then we do litigation for the city, so we handle, and anytime the city's being sued, we're there, we represent the city in that. And then we also take folks to court if we need to vindicate the rights of the city in whatever context that is. And last but not least, we do labor management. So our office manages all of the collective bargaining agreement negotiations, the enforcement of those CBAs, as well as just general legal advice to managers as they interact with staff. Moving on to slide number 4. So those are our core functions. I wanted to give everyone an idea of what we've been up to this year. So the first function I'll talk about is our code enforcement function. So our zombie property litigation, you'll see here, is going strong. And just as a reminder, zombie properties are properties that have been foreclosed on, but haven't actually received a judgment of foreclosure. So they remain owned by someone who doesn't own them. There was a relatively recent law passed by the state that allowed us to take action against the banks that are responsible for the foreclosure. And we're one of the few cities that's taken advantage of it, and of the cities that have, we probably have the most robust program as far as that goes. And that program is overseen by Christopher Check in our office. He's a really outstanding asset. You can see her on slide 4. He just received a very nice write-up in the Daily Gazette outlining his work on zombie properties. This year, we've initiated 6 new cases, and these are complicated. We've also taken in $160,000 in fines from those cases. And new this year, this is an effort that Chris was able to spearhead, we've been able to earmark that money to be reinvested back into the communities that are affected by zombie property violations. So that money goes back directly to the properties that have been harmed, and we're going to be expanding that in the coming years, we hope to anyway. Then we also have our just run-of-the-mill code enforcement effort. We have one of the best code enforcement prosecution operations, I think, in upstate New York. That's headed up by Madeline DeThomas in our office, and she gets a lot of support from Martha Moskowitz, who's a new addition to our team. They're prosecuting right now 1,251 code enforcement prosecutions, which is huge. They have another 559 cases in collections, and we are pursuing those collections. This year, they've been able to take in just under, so far, $175,000 in fines. And they've been able to do that, and they've been able to file on average 80 new cases a month, and they've been able to do that in the context in which they've had access to fewer code enforcement, code court days. So they've been really just doing an excellent job. And what you see here on the bottom of slide 4, the picture of Madeline and presenting at the New York State Building Officials Conference, which is one of the largest code enforcement, professional code enforcement associations in the state. So she and Chris presented there in October on kind of the best new practices when it comes to code enforcement prosecution. And it's a real testament to the work that they've done, giving us, again, one of the most robust code enforcement prosecution operations in the state. Moving on to slide 5, we have further code enforcement highlights. Obviously, this year we were able to work with Darius and the Parking Violations Bureau to implement the speed camera enforcement program to give people an opportunity to challenge the tickets that are issued through there. And they've done really an incredible job in terms of Jason Thomas in our office was able to head up that effort, and he was able to ensure that the program really ran like at 100% capacity from day one. And given kind of the amount of opposition that we get from the folks who receive these tickets, it's really been a remarkable success. And then we also prosecuted 5,810 vehicle and traffic tickets this year, which is a huge amount. And that's just 5,810 stops. You're obviously dealing with multiple tickets per stop and stops in most cases. We're still able to do a lot of these prosecutions by mail, so we can avoid people having to come to court, and that enables us to cut down on court resources. And Barb DeLuca in our office has been a huge, she oversees kind of taking in the tickets, sending them out to the attorneys, receiving the plea offers, and then getting those out to drivers so that we're able to, again, deal with a lot of these by mail. Moving on to slide 6. So to talk about litigation this year, we've received 238 notices of claim, which is, it's pretty average. We usually top out at around 250 for the year. We have 76 active tort lawsuits going right now, so 49 of those are being handled in-house, 27 are being handled through outside counsel. We have Brett Williams in our office handling 81 tax assessment challenges involving 299 properties. And then we've had a lot of, one of the things we're very proud of having been able to do this year is initiate legal challenges to some of the illegal executive orders that have been coming out of Washington, D.C. So we are plaintiffs in the case of San Francisco v. Trump. And through that case, we've been able to, we're protected by a temporary restraining order that prevents the federal government from denying us federal funding based on our quote-unquote sanctuary city status. We're working on joining King County v. Turner, which is going to be challenging some of the other political conditions that have been tied to federal money through, again, those illegal executive orders, things like, prohibiting us from using our funding to, engage in diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, from, under these executive orders, you would have to agree not to promote gender ideology and things like that. So we've been able to join with some other cities to get protection from those, and we're going to continue to do that. And in addition to these two cases, we've also signed on to amicus briefs in several other cases challenging things like the deployment of National Guard troops to cities, the decision not to fully fund SNAP benefits during the shutdown, and several other matters. So we've been really, happy to be able to do that. So moving on to advice and counsel, our office handles a ton of phone calls from city employees and also from the public, and we have Jessica Babo and Heavenly Morris in our office. They answer the phones all day. They do an outstanding job of advising people on if they want to make a claim against the city, how to do that. If they want to appeal the denial of a claim, how to do that, and generally getting people where they need to go when they call the city for services. Because a lot of times we end up being the first office that gets called as Corporation Counsel's office. Now, Corporation Counsel's office has always done trainings. It's in the past, it's been kind of on an as-needed basis. We're implementing a more systematic training program. So earlier this year, we were able to distribute a list of 15 courses that department heads could, ask us to provide to their employees. We've started doing that with the water department, and these are courses on basic things like general city liability, labor management, really any procurement, contracts, the sort of things we often receive questions about. And Ricey in my office is, on Wednesday, we're going to be doing our training to the water department on contracts and procurement. We've also, in the year to come, it's our hope to start doing these monthly on a regular basis through Zoom, kind of doing like a lunchbox training situation. So that employees, if they want to, can sign up as needed if they're interested in whatever given training we're going to be offering. And then we've also initiated or started a new a legal help desk. So it's a portal that city employees can use to pose legal questions about their work for the city to our office without necessarily needing to know somebody in Corporation Counsel's office before making that connection. It's just, overall, we want to make ourselves more available to folks, especially if they have a question about their work. So if they get a question from a constituent that they're confused about, if they have questions about a form or actions taken by a vendor, we want to make ourselves as available as possible for those. Moving on to slide 8. Labor management, collective bargaining, we've been able to bring, Linda Keller is our labor law expert. She's been able to take on a lot of take on more collective bargaining agreement negotiations. She's been able to do that in-house. We've also been able to coordinate with administrative services to identify city managers that do a lot of labor management and give them access to kind of advanced training resources, specifically through the Cornell University's School of Industrial and Labor Relations Union Management Program. And we've been able also to coordinate with administrative services to provide certain trainings on employee discipline and employee management in the context of collective bargaining agreements. So those are our highlights. Moving on to slide 9, we have our numbers. Our numbers really aren't changing all that much. If there are any questions about those, feel free to ask. But just go through our goals for next year. Like I mentioned earlier, we're looking to have those monthly legal trainings, to again increase our exposure to what our coworkers are doing in other departments and to give them some exposure to us so that they know we're there to support them. We're looking to realize some cost savings by moving more work in-house, by developing that institutional knowledge here so we don't have to spend quite so much on outside counsel. We want to develop a proactive litigation practice. So we want to, we'll be looking to identify more opportunities to challenge some of the things we expect to be coming from Washington in the next couple of years, but as well to, in situations where we feel, city vendor may have violated their contract, we want to be able to act aggressively to enforce the city's contract rights in cases where, you know, a vendor's walked away from a job. We just want to be able to know that we can do that if the situation comes up. And then staffing calibration. So we've had a position open this year. We've run a little lean. You know, as we approach the new year and the new administration, we're going to identify, you know, what needs we want to fulfill with that job, and get a posting out there and bring someone new on board. So that's my presentation. If there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Menke. That was very informative of a presentation. And say we always appreciate when we see all the great things you're doing, all the great things you plan to do, and also a flat budget. So impressive. Turning to questions from committee members, Councilmember Keegan.
Thank you, and thank you for sitting here with us for several hours, waiting your turn very patiently.
My pleasure.
One quick question on the line item for expensive litigation. We are budgeting down for that line item. Is that based upon, because it's below where our
that's
2024 actuals were,
that's
so
our-
I don't know if there was a dip in 2025.
Yeah, that's our expectation, both for, 25 and 26. As Rob mentioned, we brought a lot more of the labor contracts in-house, and as a result, we have a reduction in that contract. And in 24 and some prior years, we had some litigation regarding the public officer misconduct that needed to be settled, and we don't anticipate those recurring.
Okay. And the only other thing I will say is that I can confirm that city staff were at the Cornell training, because we all went to training together. We're doing two different certifications, but we had a week where those certification courses overlapped. So, and I think that was a really good idea. I know I reached out to Anne-Marie last spring, advising that this might be good for folks who are dealing with our bargaining units, and I appreciate that the city took that to heart and sent those people through this year.
Councilmember Ballerin.
Thank you, sure. And I'm be quick. Thank you, Rob. Thank you for being here. And I just have one quick question. How are we doing on morale? I know that was an issue that we were dealing with in the past couple of years with trying to keep council. Has that improved?
Yeah, it's been great. I was very lucky to inherit a team that Judge Franchini had built in her time. We have been able to maintain the exact same staffing we had as when she left. We haven't filled her position. But yeah, our team is, we have a really, really strong team now.
That's good to hear. And thank you, Rob, for your many years of service to our city, and hopefully many, many more. Thank you.
Councilmember Farrell.
Thanks so much, and thanks for waiting, even though for just one moment in time, I thought you were going to go first. I'm absolutely, I think one of the benefits of having all of the different presentations is a lot of times we don't necessarily know what all the different departments are doing, the nuances of it. And I really appreciate when I had looked through this ahead of time, I thought, this is fantastic. Especially things like we've talked about for years, really bringing that labor and collective bargaining in-house. And I know that that's a complicated thing to do, and I'm just thrilled that that's something that is really happening. Mm-hmm. Obviously the more things we can do in-house, especially with law, you can't always do things in-house. But it's a great thing when we really can. And I'm thrilled about the goals. We've talked a lot about particularly training for different board members. We have a lot of different boards and commissions and things like that, and having trainings for them on the legal aspect of it would be spectacular, and I think definitely needed. And the more proactive we can be, especially with litigation, the better it is for the city. So I'm thrilled with that. And I also just wanted to thank you so much for all that you've done an amazing job. You've stepped into a lot of big shoes, but you filled them incredibly well. And we just really, really appreciate all that you and your office does, and look forward to continued success. So thank you.
Thank you, that means a lot.
Additional questions from the committee about other council members? Okay. Excellent. I think we are all set for this evening. Thank you for everything you do, Mr. McGee. Appreciate the work you do for our city. And again, I'll reiterate, thank you for your patience to the two of you. Okay. At this time, we have a couple discussions left here, including local law C. I want to take a pulse of those present. Does anyone need a break? Are we good to keep rolling? All right, let's do it. So first is the discussion on the Albany Housing Authority's request for increased security. That's a item from Councilmember Ballerin. At this time, I'll defer to Councilmember Ballerin to explain this item.
Thank you, Chair. I defer to hold this. Again, this is something that was brought to me by others, and I also have to be honest. I understand the difficult budget situation that we're in, so I'd ask just for us to hold until we allow others to come in and speak on it, because I'm not sure we can afford to do it. I'll be honest. I don't know if we can afford to do it, but you know, it's not fair for it's not fair for those who did come to me that there's no one here to speak on that. So you know, and if it's not something we can put on the budget, I understand. But I'm glad, and thank you, Sheriff, for at least putting it on the agenda.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can
I think another part of that is the responsible party. I think is one of our questions that we've had. Who is the responsible party to increase security at this particular location? And is it truly under city purview? So I just want to bring that into conversation as well, being that Albany Housing Authority should be the one funding for security, for the increased security for said location. So appreciate the concern, also understanding not only the budget season we're in, but the responsibility metric. I appreciate the sentiment of the sponsor to look to hold this. Council President Ellis.
Yes, this made me come down when I saw this, because I wanted to share some insight onto this request. When myself, Councilmember Ballerin, Councilmember Johnson, and I think it was just us three. Well, Kelly is on the board, so he was there. When we asked about security to the board at that time, we asked, was it a funding issue? And they said no. They said, we have the funds. So at that time, that's what they told us. They said, this is not a funding issue. It's fining people. So when I saw this, I was like, wait a minute, someone's asked for money. When we met with the executive director and the board, they said it wasn't a funding issue. I don't think it's a funding issue either. I believe it's a policy issue on how they're going to, how they, you know, able to find security, not find security. But at that time, we were told it was not a funding issue. For lack of funds, that's what we were told.
And thank you for that context, Council President Ellis. I think that's extremely helpful as well to know not only responsibility, but is there a struggle for funding? And it doesn't sound like that may be the case here. So I will turn to Councilmember Keegan.
Thank you. My understanding is that for a long time they relied upon APD to provide that security, and APD does not have the manpower to do that, but they have not alternately bid out their funding to secure a new firm to provide in-building security. So Again, I go back to, it is not the fiscal responsibility of the city to secure any privately owned building, of which they are privately owned buildings. They are owned by the federal government. We do not have the resources, nor should we. I mean, that's certainly not a service that we provide to any other housing provider in the city, whether they're for-profit or non-for-profit. And they have the funds, they just have not done the work to identify a firm to be able to provide that now that APD is no longer, and I believe there are also some concerns from APD because the officers were double dipping. And there was a case where a number of officers who were doing that gig were found to have also been on the clock with the city. So, you know, I'm not sure why this discussion is coming to budget as opposed to going to the board.
Councilmember Ballerin.
Thank you, Chair. So just to be clear, so this is something that came from the tenants, not from the authority. It was a request from the tenants for us to at least have a conversation about it, because the frustration would be, and this is from them, of being one person saying it's not our responsibility and going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So they're not here to better illustrate their position. And again, because of that and because of our tight budget situation, where we're looking to save. This isn't something that I appreciate the chair putting this for us to at least have a conversation about, and at least there'll be a public discussion of the fact that there is a group of our neighbors and residents that are asking for some type of increased security in this area. But again, without their representation and without really the resources we have, I'm willing to move forward because there's some tougher conversations we have ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you. If no further conversation on this item, we are going to proceed. Goal is to get us out of here by 9. That would have been a 3-hour, 30-minute meeting, so we'll try our best. Next topic for conversation is the discussion on property tax. As a recap and also an update to you all, this committee had a longer discussion our last meeting around the property tax increase as well as the increased tax fee. And as stated here this evening with Mayor-elect and others present, we are looking at the consolidated impact to our residents as well as the overall affordability concern that our residents have. And so what measures can we pull as a body to address that? Obviously, the trash fee, as previously discussed, has 100% increase, a double to cost. Over many years, the expenditure of the tax fee was higher than the revenue coming in. That is not statutorily how the trash fee is written. So we are right-sizing that this year, but it is a large burden and increase to our residents. The other thing we thought of is prospectively for the trash fee with the landfill closure and the future uncertainties that those fees would likely raise in the future. So if we don't increase this now, how does it look in years to come when it has to go even higher? So for that reason, as a committee, we agreed to look at property tax increase. And what we are really looking here, we understand the necessity to increase property taxes to have the city services, the city operation in the way that we would like to see it. However, 3% is high and impactful to our residents. So what we are trying to do as a committee is decrease that to 2%. In speaking to the budget director, the way to get to a 2% 2% increase to property tax, aka 1% decrease than what is proposed from 3 to 2, is to cut approximately $630,000 in the budget. So as a committee, we agreed that we would look to do that and work with our budget director to pursue that 1% decrease, overall 2% increase to property tax. Since that conversation we had last week, I have had conversations with the budget director, who might be out there right now. But hopefully, we will come to an agreement where there is a more strategic look at the budget on his behalf to see if there's larger items that we can pull for 630, as opposed to our committee having to line item and decrease supplies and our furniture and our contracted services from departments. I believe there's a path to get there. So I'm not asking anyone to start marking up that book and going through that process this evening yet. But my hope is that we are going to find a solution to get there and not have to go through that effort. So that is the recap and the update for you all on property taxes. Obviously, we had some other discussion on that this evening. So is there anything additional committee members or council members would like to discuss on this topic? Okay. Not seeing any. So we will proceed with pursuing a decrease to the budget of $630K, therefore reducing the property tax proposed increase from 3% to 2% for our city residents. The last item on the agenda is Local Law C of 2025. That's a local law amending Section 42-236, the annual salaries elective officers of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to the salaries of elective officers. As part of the presentation from the Chief of Staff this evening, we had a slide in there. I will find. On page 7, which is technically slide 14, of the proposed wage adjustments that we have for our elected officials. For transparency, that would include increasing the mayor's office 11.4% to $160K compared to $143K. It would propose increasing the city treasurer and the city officer, both collectively 18.5%, from a salary of $105K to $125K. It would propose increasing the president of the Common Council 13.5% from $33K to $38K, increasing the president pro tem of the Common Council from 13.7% from $24K to $28K, increasing the majority leader of the Common Council, also 13.7% from $24K to $28K, and finally increasing Common Council members from 13.7% as well, from $22K to $25K. Discussions on this local law. Councilmember Keegan.
I will say to everyone listening that I am one of the folks who worked behind the scenes on this. We have not given raises to elected officials in quite some time. I think it's been roughly 8 years. And there are certainly members of this body, not all of us, but certainly members of this body for whom their council salary is a huge portion of their income and their living. And so when you don't increase that salary, you really negatively impact certain members of the body. We also wanted to look at our citywide electeds, many of whom were making substantially less than our commissioners, despite doing a significant amount of work. I know particularly for the auditor race, there were a number of people who turned down that opportunity because it just was not comparable salary-wise to what they were earning in the private sector. And so I think what is proposed here is a fair proposal, despite the many concerns that we have about the budget overages. And this is our opportunity to do it. If we do not do it this year, we will not be eligible to do it for another 4 years. So it's, you know.
Thank you, Councilmember Keegan. Councilmember Ballerin.
Thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate the work that was done on this. I do, and I do agree that this definitely is a need to right-size the affordability for people to be able to take on these positions. I think it's it's great when some people can afford not to have a salary, but if you want to have a system of government that has all perspectives, we need to be able to have perspectives from people who wouldn't be able to sit in these chairs if there wasn't a salary. And I think, that's important for us to consider as we have these discussions. So I'm in favor of this. The only issue I have right now, and to be 100% honest, I am concerned with voting on this without us figuring out the other reductions or the other increase in revenue, so that we can have that settled before we move forward with this. So that's just my honest position on this, but I'm not against it, and I appreciate the hard work that's been done to get us there. Thank you.
Other committee members? Councilmember Farrell.
I just wanted to say that when it comes, it's always an interesting conversation when it comes to elected official salaries, because as a municipality, you're always less than where you are in the private sector. And there are certain benefits. I don't want to say that we're fortunate to have good benefits, things along those lines. But the issue with not paying a competitive salary to elected officials means that it really becomes a job of the wealthy, because they're the only ones that can afford to really do the job. And that's certainly the case with Common Council. A Common Council could, depending on how you do it and what your role is, it can be nearly full-time. So it's something that I fully support all of the raises. I personally would have been more comfortable to see council go up beyond that. I'm okay with where it is. But I know for me personally, I am somebody that relies on this. If I did not have council, I would have to have, I'm a single parent with a lot of kids in college. I would have to have a different job in addition to if you work for a different municipality, which also doesn't pay very well. So it is something that when people look at elected official salaries, they have to understand that there's a lot that goes into that, and a lot of sacrifices that people that work for municipalities, whether they're elected or staffing, a lot of sacrifices that are made in order to dedicate yourself to a municipality. So making sure that you can pay people appropriately puts a job like council or another position on the map for a lot of people where it wouldn't be otherwise. So I'm definitely supportive of this, and I appreciate the work that Councilmember Keegan and the Budget Department did in making sure that we were consistent with other municipalities.
Okay, Councilmember Conti.
Thank you. I just want to note that there was a time, and there was language in the current law that's being repealed, where the council was getting automatic increases every year. That was the language that related to the COLA and the blue-collar contract. And that provision actually was continuing into when the new charter took effect in 1999. There was a question back then as to whether the charter preempted that section, but there was an opinion from Corp Counsel at the time, Gary Stiglmeyer, who gave a written opinion, which I don't have, unfortunately, that said that provision still was not negated by the adoption of the charter, which said you can't raise your salaries during your term of office, because I believe it was pre-existing local law, and therefore that automatic COLA language was applied during the charter. There were times when it was not, based on budget reasons, where the council didn't want to take a pay raise because we were doing other things, or sometimes city officials didn't do that. And there was a time when we were actually getting more than county legislators were getting, and because we were not taking that COLA increase, the differential totally switched over. But this does kind of, in a sense, it doesn't quite return to the automatic increases that were tied to a specific cost of living adjustment, but it creates a standardized amount, which now the council will have to statutorily increase every year as opposed to having the automatic COLA. So it puts more, while it's better, you might say, and does address an issue, it also creates another issue in terms of you're going to have to make that decision every 4 years versus the automatic. One question, when we put, a few years back, we put in the stipend, was a stipend, not a salary increase, for council president pro tem and the majority leader, which was not meant to be a salary increase. At the time, it was meant to be a stipend, and somehow it got incorporated that way. I'm wondering in terms of the language here, since the language sets the annual salaries for the specified officers, but then in the budget, the appropriation language sets a different salary for the president pro tem and the majority leader. So this sets the council member salary at 25, but when you go into the budget book, it lines out president pro tem and majority leader at 28. And I don't know if that is an issue because it's inconsistent now with the statutory change that you're making. And again, that $3,000 was meant to be a separate stipend, and that's the way we did it back then, but then it got kind of lumped in with salary for ease maybe. But maybe that should in some way be lined out so as not to create a perceived conflict here. And I don't know if legally, maybe I'm all wrong, but it just jumps out at me that way.
Right. So this essentially has all of the members of the Common Council at 25, 3K stipend on top for majority leader and president pro tem. Right. Councilmember Keegan.
I don't think it would be like a huge to-do to separate out the stipends and create a line item for that, another 7,000.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't change the
Because
statutory.
your concern is the way it shows up in the book, right? Like within the budget itself.
Versus
Yeah, the budget book, this is your appropriation bill, right?
Correct, yes.
And
So I'm just saying, I don't think it would be a huge to-do for us to separate those stipends out
In the budget book. Yeah.
Yeah, in the actual
Mhm.
bill that gets passed. I mean, you're not talking about actually changing
No,
the, but you might have to allocate, you may have to allocate that someplace else.
And what if we just update the local law to have additional line items for the president pro tem and the majority leader?
I mean, I think that's fine as well.
it does restrict your authority, possibly if you wanted to change the stipend policy in different ways. I don't know if you want to do that, but, I mean, if you could line it out, that might be the easier way of doing it, but just raising it.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point you bring up, Councilmember Conti, just for consistency amongst the budget book and the local law, and two options at play here, so we'll take that back. It does sound like there's an interest to not vote this out of committee until we have some assurance on the reductions and where they're going to come from. So it sounds like this will be taken up on Thursday, unless there's additional, yes. So we will, at this time, go to Councilmember Hoey.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a former student of mine, Ben Callos, went down, he was from New York City. When he left the university, he went down and he got elected to the city council. One of the first things he did was make the part-time city council of New York City a full-time job. And it was paying it was between $140,000 and $150,000 for it. Some could argue that Albany is not New York City, but the problems that we deal with are very much similar to what goes on in New York City. We're a small microcosm. There's a smaller amount of common council members that compared to what New York City has, because, you know, they have 7, 8 million people. If we look across the street at the state legislature, we elect an assembly person, we elect a senator, part-time jobs, and they're being paid over $140,000 a year. So, you know, for the public who are watching, or anybody who wants to say, I know we have a member out there who feels, or a citizen out there that feels that we don't deserve a raise, you know, I would contradict that. The amount of work that we do and the amount of good that we do for the people in this city is tremendous. Nobody knows till you're sitting in the seat what we deal with every day. People calling us up, screaming at us. I've had more complaints about the red light cameras, and I tell people I'm one of the sponsors of this, and this was important for the city. We put our necks on the line with abuse from our, unfortunately, from our citizens and our residents. So I'm in favor of this. I don't like that we're going to wait and, you know, make it look good because we're going to cut money from some other place. We're doing the work for 8 years. I've sat here in this seat with no raise, and my workload has increased. It hasn't decreased, it's increased. And during COVID, I brought it up before, we survived COVID because of the work of the people in this room, the mayor downstairs, the treasurer, everybody involved in city government. We made this city survive. And for people to say, well, you don't deserve a raise, and if you look at the amount of money, we're talking about $3,000. I mean, for over 4 years, the percentage, it's embarrassing to tell people that this is what we're doing, but I know we got to stay within restraints. One of the problems I have, though, is while I think I missed 3 or 4 meetings over the last 4 years, there's members here who miss more than half, and they still get paid. But again, I'm not their supervisor. You know, there's a person upstairs, or this karma that should be supervising these people. But I took on the responsibility to represent the people from my ward. I made sure that I'm here. I made sure that I read the material that comes out. I'm here working. And, you know, this will be my last time, my last race, my last thing in here. So when the next race comes around, I will be advocating for the next group of people to come in and sit here. But I just hope we really, this is, to me, this is a no-brainer. The people in this room deserve an increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoey, for your sentiments. And just to be clear, irregardless of the, I think I might have phrased it a little bit preemptive, irregardless of the interest of one committee member to potentially hold and solve this, there is an amendment to this that we need to sort out and 2 options at play. So we will be voting on this Thursday evening. But I think there's a, you know, I support this as well, so I can say confidently there's a majority of support on this committee. Okay. Any other comments on local law C? Councilmember Keegan.
I just would also add in addition to that, I mean, we sat through a presentation from our mayor this evening about all of the support staff that is needed to go into the mayor's office. Every single one of, I mean, we have wonderful staff, but we share them. And so we do our own social media, our own communications, our own press relations on top of the work of this body, which is, I think, also something that folks really overlook that kind of goes into this job. You know, I don't have somebody to answer my phone and take messages and, you know, help people navigate through their problems. I'm the person that does that. So, again, I know it's never popular, but I think after 8 years, you're talking about roughly 1.25% COLA adjustment for each one of those 8 years. I think it's well deserved.
Thank you. If no further comments, where we are at with our budget, right? So I just want to recap, I have it somewhere, the remaining schedule. So budget intent memo is in draft. It's either coming out by midnight tonight if I'm awake, or if it's coming out tomorrow morning. depending on my sleep schedule. But I want to thank I want to thank Brian Jimenez very much for the draft that he's helped pull together and the template and all the assistance that you've done to date on that. So that will be coming out shortly. My ask is that when it comes out, if committee members and other council members can take the time to review, let us know if there's anything missing, because we will be discussing on Thursday the 13th. That being said, our next Finance Committee meeting is Thursday the 13th at 5:30. We will have discussion on any unfinished business, so we will discuss Local Law C, as just mentioned, with future amendments. We will discuss Local Law D and finalizing that out of committee, which is the curbside collection fee. We will discuss Resolution 123-101-25R, which is the homestead and non-homestead adjustments. We will also discuss amendments to the budget. To date, we have a number of changes that will be made to certain rows that will be lined out, but a lot of no net impacts. And then we have an increase from our city clerk's office of approximately $3K to help with the front desk replacement. And then we also have a request from our committee to reduce property tax by 1%, so cutting $630K. During that conversation, I will come with updated amendment line items of things that we can pull from to make that process, and ultimately be able to vote on that on the 17th. The other thing we have on 11/13 outside of budget is Ordinance 59-101-25. That's Mount Zion property on Cherry Avenue that we'll discuss first briefly at the beginning of the conversation. On 11/17, that is intended to be our last meeting on the budget, which will be our regular scheduled meeting. At that time, we'll have our second public hearing at 7 o'clock, and then we will also be voting on the budget and the budget intent memo at that time, and our associated local laws and resolutions, and bond ordinances. So a long evening for us to go through, but hopefully at that point in time, we are finalizing and ending our budget season. Any questions on the next steps for budget? Okay. If none, at this time, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn from Councilmember Adams, second from Councilmember Keegan. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.